The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species in the known universe. Its walls stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the ceiling. 12 massive thrones sat in a circle, each one designed for a different alien species. On this day, all 12 seats were filled. The rulers of the galaxy had gathered to watch something they considered very important in the center of the room. A young human girl knelt on the cold metal floor. Her name was Yuna. She was 16 years old. Her hands were bound behind her back by glowing blue energy that burned whenever she moved. Her school uniform was torn and dirty. She had been wearing it for 3 days now, ever since they took her from the streets of Vesser Prime. Yuna did not cry. She had stopped crying on the first day. Around her, thousands of alien beings filled the viewing galleries. They came from dozens of different worlds. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had no bodies at all, just floating lights that whispered to each other. They all looked down at the small human girl with the same expression, curiosity, like she was an interesting insect. "Hi, Arbiter." Vaughn stood from his throne and raised one clawed hand. The room fell silent immediately. Vaughn was a Vasari, a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His species had ruled this sector of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched countless species discover space travel, grow confident, and then learn their place in the order of things. Humans were the newest species to reach the stars. They'd only been traveling between worlds for about 100 years. To the Thessari, this made them children. Foolish, emotional children who did not understand the rules. The human female designated Yuna has been found guilty of sacred trespass, Vaughn announced. His voice echoed through the massive chamber. She entered the Temple of First Light on Thesser Prime without permission. This is a crime punishable by death under the ancient Thessari Codex. In the human section of the gallery, Ambassador Hannah gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent 30 years building peace between humanity and the other species. Now she watched that work crumble. "Hi, Arbiter," she called out, her voice steady despite her fear. The girl is a child. She did not know the temple was restricted. She was looking for her father, Captain Tay, who disappeared 3 days ago. Surely the council can show mercy. Vaughn turned his ancient eyes toward her. Ignorance is not a defense. The law is the law. It has been the law for 10,000 years. It will not change for one primitive species. Commander Wu stood beside Ambassador Hannah. He was a tall man with a soldier's posture and a soldier's scars. His hand kept moving toward the weapon at his hip, then stopping. He knew that if he drew that weapon, every human in this room would die. But watching a child kneel before executioners was testing every limit he had. She is 16 years old? Hannah tried again. On Earth, she would not even be considered an adult. She cannot be held to the same standard as enough. Vaughn's voice cut through the air like a blade. The human delegation has made its position clear. The council has heard your words. The council does not care. A sound rippled through the alien audience. It took Hannah a moment to realize they were laughing. In the center of the room, Yuna finally looked up. Her eyes found the broadcast drone floating nearby. She knew that the execution would be shown across the entire galaxy. 400 billion beings on countless worlds would watch her die. The council wanted to send a message. They wanted every species to remember what happened when you broke their rules. But Yuna was not thinking about the galaxy. She was thinking about her father. Captain Tay had been a diplomat. Like Ambassador Hannah, he had come to the Sur Prime for a peace conference. Then he had simply vanished. The Thessari government said they knew nothing. They said he probably ran away. They said humans were cowards who abandoned their duties. Yuna knew they were lying. She had felt it in her bones. So she had searched. She had asked questions. She had followed rumors through the alien city until she found herself standing before an ancient temple that glowed with strange light. And inside that temple, she had found the truth. She had found her father. He was alive. He was being held prisoner. The Thessari were using him as a bargaining chip, a way to control human expansion into this sector of space. They never expected anyone to find out. They certainly never expected a 16-year-old girl to walk through their sacred doors. Now, Yuna knelt before the rulers of the galaxy, and she could not tell anyone what she knew. They had put something in her throat that stopped her from speaking more than a few words at a time. They did not want her to ruin their ceremony with human emotions. The execution platform rose from the floor behind her. It was a simple thing. A metal frame with restraints for the arms and legs. A device at the top that would end her life quickly and cleanly. The Thesari believed in efficient death. Yuna looked at the broadcast drone one more time. She thought about her mother, who had died when Yuna was young. She thought about her father, trapped somewhere in that temple, probably watching this same broadcast. She whispered the only words she could manage, "Appa, Mayan dad, I am sorry," across the galaxy. 19 billion humans heard those words. They saw the tears finally fall from her eyes. They saw the alien audience laugh again. They saw High Arbiter Vaughn gesture for the guards to take her to the platform. And something changed. It was not a sound. It was not a signal. It was something deeper. Something that moved through every human heart at exactly the same moment. They were watching a child die. For walking into the wrong building. They were watching aliens laugh at her tears. They were watching the galaxy teach humanity its place. The transmission continued. The guards moved forward, and 19 billion humans began to move too. On Earth, it was morning in the capital city. President Q was sitting in his office with 6 advisors discussing trade agreements with a minor alien species. The screen on his wall was showing the news, but the sound was turned off. Nobody was paying attention to it. Then the broadcast from Thesser Prime began. One of the advisors noticed first. She stopped talking in the middle of her sentence. Her face went pale. President Q turned to look at the screen, and he saw a young girl kneeling on an alien floor. He saw the restraints on her hands. He saw the execution platform rising behind her. He reached for the remote and turned on the sound. The human female designated Yuna has been found guilty of sacred trespass. For the next 3 minutes, nobody in that room moved. They watched Ambassador Hannah plead for the girl's life. They watched the alien audience laugh. They watched the guards move toward Yuna with cold efficiency. When she whispered those words in Korean, President Q closed his eyes. He had a daughter the same age. She was probably in school right now, complaining about homework, thinking about her friends, living the simple life that young people deserved. This girl would never have that life again. "Get me Admiral Day," the president said quietly. Now, 6,000 light-years away. Admiral Day was drinking tea in his quarters aboard the command station Luna Base. He was an old man now, 67 years old. He had fought in the border wars when he was young. He had lost friends. He had lost his son. He had spent his entire life building the human fleet into something that could protect their species. But he had always known it would not be enough. The alien empires were too big. Their fleets were too large. If they ever decided to destroy humanity, there was nothing he could do to stop them. So he had focused on other things. Trade, diplomacy, slow growth. He had told himself that peace was the only way forward. Now he watched a girl kneel before her executioners, and he felt something break inside him. His communication officer burst through the door without knocking. "Admiral, we are receiving requests from every human vessel in the sector. Military, civilian, commercial. They all want to know the same thing." "What are they asking?" "They want orders, sir. They want to know what to do." Admiral Day set down his teacup. His hands were shaking. He was not sure if it was age or rage. On the screen, the guards were fitting restraints around Yuna's ankles. The Admiral had spent his whole life being careful, being patient, being wise. He was done being wise. He pressed the button on his communication panel. His voice went out to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. "This is Admiral Day. All vessels are to proceed to Thesser Prime immediately. Use any route available. Do not wait for formation. Do not wait for orders. Bring her home now." The response was instant. On the mining vessel Horizon's Edge, Engineer Suji dropped her tools and ran for the bridge. The ship's captain was already there, already plotting the fastest course to Thesser Prime. They were a cargo ship. They had no weapons. They had no armor. None of that mattered. How long? The captain asked. 6 hours through standard routes, the navigator replied. But there is another way. The Kessler Corridor. It is unstable. Most ships cannot survive it. Can we survive it? The navigator was quiet for a moment. Maybe 50% chance. The captain looked at the screen. Yuna was being dragged toward the execution platform. Her feet were leaving marks on the floor where she tried to resist. Do it, the captain said. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on 1,000 ships. The destroyer Indomitable abandoned its patrol route and dove into a hyperspace corridor that should have torn it apart. The passenger liner Bright Dawn changed course mid-journey, its 3,000 passengers voting unanimously to delay their vacation. The research vessel Silent Star packed its scientists into escape pods and sent the main ship toward Thesser Prime at maximum speed, piloted by a skeleton crew of volunteers. Nobody ordered them to do this. Nobody asked them to risk their lives. They simply saw a child about to die, and they moved. On Luna Base, Admiral Day watched the fleet positioning data with wide eyes. Ships were appearing on trajectories that made no sense. They were using routes that were supposed to be impossible. They were burning through fuel reserves that would leave them stranded. They did not care. His communication officer looked terrified. Sir, High Command is asking what is happening. They want to know if this is an authorized military action. Tell them the truth, Admiral Day replied. Tell them I have no idea what is happening. Tell them humanity is happening. Back on Earth, President Q was having a similar conversation with his advisors. The defense minister was shouting about starting an interstellar war. The foreign minister was warning about the destruction of humanity. Everyone had very good reasons why they should stop this madness immediately. The president listened to all of them. Then he walked to the window and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, a 16-year-old girl was about to die because she loved her father enough to look for him. Somewhere out there, thousands of humans were risking everything to save her. Not because they knew her, not because they were ordered to, but because she was one of them. He thought about his own daughter again. He thought about what he would want the galaxy to do if she were the one on her knees. Let them go, the president said. This could mean war with the entire Galactic Council. I know. He turned back to face his advisors. Let them go anyway. Some things are worth a war. On the broadcast, Yuna was now strapped to the execution platform. The Thessary priest had begun his ritual chanting. The alien audience had fallen silent. Watching with ancient eyes that had seen this ceremony 1,000 times before, they had no idea what was coming. The Thessary priest raised his forearms toward the ceiling and spoke words that were older than human civilization. His voice echoed through the great chamber in a language that had not changed for 10,000 years. Every syllable was precise. Every gesture was perfect. This was the sacred ritual of judgment. It would not be rushed for anyone. Yuna hung in the restraints of the execution platform, her arms and legs spread wide. She could feel the device above her head humming with energy. She did not know exactly how it worked, only that it would be quick. The Thessari believed in clean death. They saw it as a gift to the condemned. Ambassador Hannah had stopped pleading. She stood in the human gallery with tears running down her face, watching history happen. Beside her, Commander Wu had removed his hand from his weapon. There was no point anymore. Whatever happened next, he would die with that child. He had made his peace with that. The priest finished the first part of his chant and paused. This was the moment when the condemned could speak their final words. It was an ancient tradition meant to show the mercy of the council. The device in Yuna's throat had been removed. She could speak now. The whole galaxy was watching, waiting to hear what a human child would say in her. Final moments. Yuna opened her mouth, and then the sky broke. The first ship came through so fast that it registered on the sensors, only after it had already arrived. The Indomitable, a human destroyer that should have been 7 hours away, dropped out of hyperspace directly above the Council Citadel. Its hull was glowing red from the impossible journey. Small fires burned along its surface. It should not have survived, but it had. Captain. Jin stood on the bridge of his wounded ship and looked down at the citadel below. His crew was injured. His engines were failing. He had maybe 20 minutes before the whole ship fell apart. It was enough. "Open a channel to the council," he ordered. "All frequencies. Make sure everyone hears this." The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, sir. This is Captain Jin of the human vessel Indomitable. We are here for our citizen. You have 3 minutes to release her." In the great chamber, High Arbiter Vaughn looked up at the ceiling as if he could see through it to the ship above. His ancient face showed something it had not shown in 300 years. Confusion? One ship? He made a sound that might have been laughter. You send one damaged ship against the Galactic Council. Human arrogance truly knows no bounds. Then the second ship arrived, and the third, and the fourth, within 60 seconds. 100 human vessels surrounded Thesser Prime. Within 2 minutes, that number had grown to 500. By the 3-minute mark, there were over 1,000 ships in orbit, and more were still coming. The Council's sensor arrays were screaming with alerts. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace through corridors that should have been impossible. They were arriving from directions that made no sense. Some of them were military vessels with weapons ready. Some of them were cargo ships with nothing but their hulls to offer. Some of them were passenger liners filled with civilians who had voted to fly into battle. None of them hesitated. None of them stopped in the great chamber. The alien delegates were rising from their thrones, shouting at each other in a dozen languages. The audience in the galleries was panicking, rushing toward the exits. Only the humans remained calm. Ambassador Hannah was no longer crying. She was smiling. "Hi, Arbiter," Vaughn raised his voice above the chaos. "This is madness. The galactic fleet outnumbers humanity 100 to 1. You cannot win this fight." Commander Wu stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but somehow it carried through the entire chamber. "We know." The simple words silenced everyone. Even the panicking aliens stopped to listen. "We know we cannot win," Wu continued. "We know that if we fight, we will lose. We know that you could destroy every human colony, burn every human world, end our species completely." He pointed at the ceiling, at the fleet still growing above them. "They know it too. Every person on those ships knows they are probably going to die today. They came anyway. Do you understand what that means?" High Arbiter Vaughn stared at him with ancient eyes. "It means you are fools. It means your species is too stupid to survive." "No," Wu shook his head slowly. "It means we love our children more than we fear death. It means that every human in the galaxy saw a girl on her knees, and they decided that some things matter more than survival. Above them, the fleet count passed 2,000 ships. Small vessels were positioning themselves as shields for larger ones. Armed ships were targeting the Citadel's defense systems. Unarmed ships were preparing to ram anything that moved toward the planet. The galactic broadcast was still running. 400 billion beings across the galaxy were watching. Most of them had never seen anything like this. They had never seen a species that would die rather than abandon one child. Captain Jin's voice came through the speakers again. "Hi, Arbiter Vaughn. Your 3 minutes are over. Release the girl, or we will come through those walls to get her." "You will die," Vaughn replied. "Yes," Jin agreed. "We will, but so will you. So will this citadel. So will everyone who stands between us and that child. Is that what you want? Is her death worth the destruction of everything you have built?" For the first time in his long life, High Arbiter Vaughn did not know what to say. On the execution platform, Yuna looked at the chaos around her. She looked at the ships on the screens, still arriving, still coming for her. She thought about all those people, all those strangers who had left their homes and their families to save one girl they had never met. And finally, she understood what it meant to be human. The council chamber had become a war room. Alien generals were shouting orders into communication devices. Tactical officers were rushing between stations, trying to make sense of the impossible fleet that had gathered above them. Every few seconds, Another alert would sound as more human ships arrived. High Arbiter Vaughn stood at the center of the chaos, his four hands clasped behind his back. He had ruled this council for 300 years. He had seen rebellions crushed. He had seen empires fall. He had never seen anything like this. "Give me options," he commanded. A Thesari military commander approached with a tablet showing fleet positions. "The human vessels are not maintaining defensive formations, High Arbiter. They are actively targeting our shield generators, our communication arrays, our orbital platforms. If they attack, they will cause massive damage before we can respond." "Then destroy them," Vaughn replied. "The galactic fleet is 100 times larger than this human mob." "Yes, but the galactic fleet is spread across 1,000 worlds. It would take days to assemble enough ships to match this concentration of force." The commander paused. "And there is another problem." "What?" "They are broadcasting everything. Every species in the galaxy is watching this." Vaughn turned to look at the broadcast drones still floating near the execution platform. He had ordered them there to show the galaxy what happened to those who broke council law. Now they were showing something very different. They were showing a 16-year-old girl strapped to a death machine while thousands of ships gathered to save her. They were showing humans crying and laughing and praying as they flew into almost certain death. They were showing a species that had chosen love over survival. Vaughn understood politics. He understood power. And he understood that this broadcast was destroying everything the Council had built. For 10,000 years, the older species had maintained control through fear. They told younger species that resistance was pointless. They showed them executions and punishments. They taught them that the Council was eternal, unchangeable, unstoppable. Now the galaxy was watching a species refuse to learn that lesson, Ambassador. Hana stepped forward from the human gallery. Her tears had dried. Her voice was steady and cold. "You have spent centuries calling us primitive," she said. "Emotional, irrational. You said we would never amount to anything, because we could not control our feelings like the older species." She pointed at the screens showing the human fleet. "Oh, we're right. We cannot control our feelings. We see a child about to die and we come for her. We do not calculate the odds. We do not weigh the costs. We simply move. Every single one of us." Commander Wu moved to stand beside her. "This is not a military action, High Arbiter. This is not a government decision. Those ships out there are doctors and teachers and farmers and shopkeepers. They are grandparents and teenagers and pregnant women. They did not wait for orders. They saw what you were doing, and they came." "That is insanity," Vaughn replied. "No." Hannah shook her head. "That is humanity. And if you kill that girl, you will see what insanity really looks like. Because we will not stop coming. We will not negotiate. We will not forgive. You will have to destroy every human in the galaxy to end this. And even then, the last one standing will be crawling toward you with a knife in their teeth." A terrible silence fell over the chamber. The alien delegates looked at each other with something new in their eyes. Fear. They had always believed that humans were weak because they were emotional. Now they've realized the truth. Humans were not weak. They were terrifying. A species that would sacrifice everything for one child was a species that could not be threatened, could not be controlled, could not be stopped. Then another alert sounded. A communication officer looked up with a pale face. "High Arbiter, we are receiving a transmission from the Temple of First Light. Priority Level 1. Vaughn frowned. The temple was the most sacred place on Nesser. Prime. Priority Level 1 meant something had gone very wrong. Put it through. Screen changed to show a Zari priest standing in the ancient halls of the temple. Behind him, human soldiers were visible, moving through the sacred corridors with weapons ready. "High Arbiter," the priest said, his voice shaking. "The humans have breached the temple. They found the prisoner. The human male, Captain Tay, they know everything." The chamber fell silent. Yuna, still strapped to the execution platform, began to laugh. It was a small sound at first, but it grew and grew until it filled the chamber. "You thought I walked into your temple by accident," she said. Her voice was hoarse, but strong. "You thought I was just a stupid human child who did not know the rules. But I knew exactly what I was doing." She looked directly at High Arbiter Vaughn. "I knew my father was in there. I knew you were holding him prisoner. I knew that if I got caught, you would have to put me on trial. And I knew that a trial would mean a broadcast. A broadcast that 19 billion humans would watch." The realization spread through the chamber like a wave. The alien delegates stared at this teenage girl with new eyes. She had not stumbled into a trap. She had set one. "You used yourself as bait," Vaughn said slowly. "I used myself as truth," Una replied. "The whole galaxy now knows that the Galactic Council kidnaps diplomats and lies about it. The whole galaxy knows that you execute children for loving their parents. And the whole galaxy knows that when you threaten one human, all humans come." She smiled, blood from a cut on her lip running down her chin. "So what happens now, High Arbiter? What happens when the galaxy sees who you really are?" High Arbiter Vaughn stood before the execution platform and looked at the girl who had destroyed his empire. She was small. She was young. She was bleeding and exhausted and strapped to a machine designed to end her life. And she had one. The screens around the chamber showed the truth that Una had exposed. Human soldiers were leading Captain Tay out of the Temple of First Light. He was thin and pale from his imprisonment. But he was alive. The broadcast drones captured everything. His tears when he saw the sky again. The way he called his daughter's name over and over. The faces of the sorry priests who had kept him prisoner for months. 400 billion beings across the galaxy watched as the great lie was revealed. The Council had always claimed to be fair, just honorable. Now everyone could see what they really were: kidnappers, liars, executioners of children. The alien delegates were already receiving transmissions from their home worlds. Protests were beginning on 100 planets. Leaders were demanding explanations. The careful order that had lasted for 10,000 years was cracking apart. Vaughn could feel it all slipping away. 3 centuries of work, 3 centuries of careful planning and ruthless control, gone in 27 minutes because of one human girl. He turned to face his fellow council members. Most of them would not meet his eyes. They were already calculating how to save themselves. They were already planning to blame everything on the Thessery.
"We can still fight," Vaughn said.
"The fleet is coming. We can destroy the human ships and what?" Ambassador Hannah interrupted. "Kill them all. Show the galaxy that you murdered those who tell the truth. Every species watching this broadcast will know that they could be next. Every species will see that the Council cannot be trusted." She stepped closer to him, her small frame somehow filling the space. "You have spent 10,000 years teaching the galaxy to fear you. But fear only works when people believe they have something to lose. Those humans up there, they have already lost everything. They left their homes knowing they might never return. They said goodbye to their families. They made peace with death." She pointed at Una. "And they did it for her. For one girl they had never met, because she is human, and that is enough." Vaughn looked at the fleet still hovering above his world. Ships were still arriving. They had not stopped. Even now, knowing that he could call the Galactic Fleet, knowing that they could not possibly win, they kept coming. He thought about what Ambassador Hannah had said. He thought about a species that did not calculate the odds. A species that moved together like one body, like one heart. The moment one of their children was threatened, for the first time in 300 years, High Arbiter Vaughn felt something he did not recognize. It was fear, not fear of death. He was old enough that death held no terror for him. It was fear of something worse. Fear of watching everything he had built be destroyed by a species too stubborn, too emotional, too human to know when they should give up. He walked slowly to the execution platform. The crowd fell silent. Even the human fleet went quiet. Waiting to see what would happen next, VONN reached up with his 4 hands and pressed the release controls. The restraints holding Una opened. She fell forward, too weak to stand, and he caught her before she hit the ground. For a moment, The High Arbiter of the Galactic Council held a human child in his arms. She looked up at him with eyes that showed no fear, no hatred, no triumph. Only exhaustion. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you keep my father? What did you want?" Vaughn looked at this tiny creature who had brought his empire to its knees. "We wanted to control your species," he admitted. "We wanted to slow your expansion, to keep you weak, to make sure you never became a threat." He set her down gently and stepped back. "We failed." The chamber erupted. Ambassador Hannah rushed forward to support Yuna. Commander Wu followed close behind, his hand finally leaving his weapon now that the danger had passed. The alien delegates were shouting at each other, blaming each other. It was already fighting over who would lead what was left of the council. But Vaughn ignored all of them. He walked to the broadcast drone and spoke directly to the galaxy. "The human female Yuna is free. The charges against her are dropped. Captain Tay will be returned to human custody immediately." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "The Galactic Council acknowledges that errors were made. We acknowledge that the Sari government acted outside the bounds of law. We acknowledge." Stopped. He could not say it. Even now, even with everything falling apart around him, he could not admit what everyone already knew. Ambassador Hannah gently took the broadcast from him. She looked into the drone with eyes that held centuries of pain and hope. "We are human," she said. "We are young. We are emotional. We are everything you have been told to despise. But understand this. We do not leave our people behind. Not our soldiers. Not our elderly. Not our children. If you threaten one of us, you threaten all of us. If you hurt one of us, you hurt all of us." She looked up at the ceiling, at the fleet still waiting above. "This is our promise to the galaxy. We will never stop. We will never surrender. And we will burn every star in the sky before we let anyone take what is ours." The broadcast ended. In the silence that followed, the galaxy began to change. Over the next 3 months, 6 species formally requested alliance with Earth. The Thessary government collapsed. The Galactic Council reduced from 12 seats to 7. Humans were no longer newcomers to be dismissed. They were something else entirely. They were family. Yuna returned to Earth with her father. She went back to school. She hated the attention, the documentaries, the politicians who wanted photos. She just wanted to be normal, but every night. Her father tucked her in and whispered the same thing. 18 billion people came for you. Yuna. Never forget what that means. She never did. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the galaxy remembered what it had learned that day. Humans were chaotic, emotional, irrational. But when you threatened their children, when you pushed them too far, when you made them choose between peace and love, they chose love every single time. That was why the universe should have feared them from the start.